Hello, welcome to this episode of the Code of Honor podcast. I'm Kiley, this is Kyle, and we have such an exciting episode for you guys because we finally have progress on the Ring of Honor front. And I know Kyle was really excited about this. We were tweeting each other back and forth. We were so excited. So
all caps too. All caps.
All caps. We don't have a little bit of progress. We have a lot of progress. We had basically a whole episode of Rampage that was all Ring of Honor. It was such a good time. I know Kyle had a blast. But before we get into that, we want to talk about Tony Nese. Kyle, what do you think about Tony Nese in AEW so far? And why would he be the best fit for Ring of Honor?
I don't know that I would go with the best fit per se, but Tony Nese was one of those guys who it seemed like an odd choice. It seemed like an odd fit when he came in. I don't think anybody ever doubted his skill or his capacity as a professional wrestler. I mentioned this on Twitter myself at one point that between the slow decline of 205 Live, it really felt like a lot of people forgot just how good a professional wrestler Nese was and could be. And it's been great that he's had this opportunity with Smart Mark Sterling to show off that end of his skill set. I've mentioned in past episodes that I think he's a great fit stylistically for Ring of Honor because of what he can do and how ROH has always sort of prided itself on being the cutting edge of professional wrestling. And, you know, Nese does a variety of really interesting things in a great package for a guy his size to move the way he does, to have the power that he does. I think he presents a really interesting package. And when you go back to Roderick Strong in Ring of Honor, you saw some similar things. I don't think that Roddy's ever going to go to that. I don't think he's ever going to get to the extent that Roderick Strong is if he shows up in Ring of Honor. Roderick's an all-timer. He's going to be an ROH Hall of Famer.
Yes.
But I think he has a lot of potential in the new Ring of Honor. And we didn't want ROH to be the minor leagues. We didn't want it to feel like the land for the AEW outcasts, but there's an opportunity, but at the same time, there's opportunities for guys that aren't getting them on AEW television.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And I'm really hopeful that, we can continue to get that with guys like Tony Nese who aren't really getting a lot of TV opportunity.
Yeah, I also had the same thought when Tony Khan announced that he bought Ring of Honor. I didn't want it to be, the playground for guys who weren't getting TV time to just go and, have some stories and matches or whatever, and then just go back to AEW. But it's looking more and more like Ring of Honor is going to be its own standalone promotion that just complements AEW and vice versa. We're going to have like sibling promotions. And I'm a big fan of that idea because we've seen a lot of great crossover already. And I'm super excited. And I think Tony Nese is a great fit for Ring of Honor because something about him in AEW doesn't quite click. Like he's struggling to find his footing. Let's not say he won't find it because if you look at the history of AEW, tons of guys have been in that spot. I mean, looking over there at our new overlay, FTR, when they came to AEW, they didn't really find their footing until they did, this one big run that they're currently on when they're, collecting all the belts, their baby faces, they got the new music, the new look, so on. So that's not to say Tony Nese can't be a star in AEW, but I do think Tony Nese versus someone like Jonathan Gresham for the Ring of Honor World title or, just being the technical wrestler, the savvy wrestler we know he is, I think the best fit for him is Ring of Honor because of its like moral code, its emphasis on technical wrestling and sort of less of the AEW style, I guess I should say. So Tony Nese, especially with this story he's doing with Swerve, where he's trying to get Swerve kicked out of AEW with a petition, I love it. It's so stupid. It's so stupid because it would never work that way. But one, I really want to know who has signed this petition. I want names. And two, Swerve is another great fit for Ring of Honor, I think. He's a star in AEW already. He was a star before. And I think he's one of those guys who can go into Ring of Honor and do something major and come back to AEW and be all the better for it. So I love that we're making these connections now before our show on July 23rd.
Well, and we had Swerve make his ROH debut at Supercard of Honor as well. A lot of people, it's been a few months now, but we can't forget that either. So he's been in front of the ROH audience and blew the roof off the joint because the man exudes star power, and that'd be a huge coup for a company that is. ROH is in such an odd place right now because it's not new. It's not a fledgling company by any stretch of the imagination, but they're finding themselves all over again in this landscape. And in a way, it kind of is like a new company. It's almost like, to borrow a football analogy, it's sort of like when the Cleveland Browns went away for a few years after they became the Baltimore Ravens. And then, close to a decade later, the rights to the Browns name and logo and history and everything else stayed with the city of Cleveland, and then we started a new expansion team. It was still the Cleveland Browns, but it was like it was, but it wasn't.
Yes.
So that type of a deal. And I did want to go back to one thing about Tony Nese in Ring of Honor, because looking at our lovely new overlay here, thanks to Corey at Body Slam for putting that together for us. Put
his Twitter handle in there, producer.
Absolutely. One name that you left off the list that would be fun with Tony Nese is assuming, there you go, thank you, Corey, assuming that he retains over Jay Lethal at Death Before Dishonor, is Samoa Joe.
Yes.
Because Joe had some truly tremendous matches with Austin Aries, who was another smaller guy, and say what you will about Austin Aries, but dude could go in the ring, who could strike, who could fly, who could wrestle, who could do a little bit of everything. And it's not a direct one-to-one comparison with Aries and Nese, but I see some similarities there. And I think those styles could mesh in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I think when we look at the Ring of Honor roster as it's shaping up, I think part of the beauty of it is all these new matchups and also old matchups with a new take on them. And it reminds me of the early days of, TNA, and I guess also the early days of AEW, where there's all these familiar faces, but they haven't quite been in the same place in the same way. And yes. I'm really excited for, Joe. I think Joe's going to do great things. I'm assuming he beats Lethal. Fingers crossed. We did get that match confirmed this week in terms of Ring of Honor news. We also got Yuta, who's facing Daniel Garcia. Those two in that environment, it's going to be super interesting. Gresham is an interesting one, and I guess we could use that as a segue to talk about what happened this week. So Gresham and Lee Moriarty, they had a tag match against, Tully Blanchard Enterprises, who I'm assuming Brian Cage is still part of, but he wasn't there, which is a little strange to me.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a little bit too.
Yeah. So basically, Lee Moriarty, if you haven't seen the match, he's getting pounded by Khan. He goes for the tag to Gresham, and Gresham just walks away, and he kind of shakes hands with Tully Blanchard, gives him a little hug, and Gresham is now either allies with Tully Blanchard Enterprises or he's a full-fledged member of this faction. It's an interesting move for me because I think fans haven't really bought into Gresham yet. So it's interesting to turn him before fans have bought into him. But also I think him as a heel, especially with, this group, I think he fits in very well. And I'm looking forward to Jonathan Gresham versus Lee Moriarty, which is next week on Rampage, I think. I think it's next week's Rampage.
Yeah.
So what did you think of this turn?
Week, technically.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's Sunday. We're filming this on Sunday. What did you think of this turn? Because maybe I'm in the minority that it felt a little flat to me because AW fans aren't necessarily invested in this group or in Jonathan Gresham yet, as much as they are Lee Moriarty, who is far more familiar to them.
100%. I'm not sure why we went here, honestly. I think Gresham as a heel itself can work.
Yeah.
I don't see any issue there. The foundation had its roots as, to me, I felt they came off as kind of a heelish organization at first, so I think there's definitely some history there that proves that he can work heel and it'll be fine. I don't grasp why we decided to go here, because the obvious story leading into Death Before Dishonor was Tully gets a shot for his guys, and his guy was clearly Brian Cage. And we talked about this last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago. I don't recall. I believe it was last week, where the build clearly seems to be Gresham versus Cage.
Yeah.
And okay, that should be fun. Sure, why not? And now we've completely turned that on its ear. And moreover, we've now decided that Lee Moriarty's title shot will come on AEW television, which means that the title at Death Before Dishonor is now very up in the air.
Yeah.
I have no idea where that can possibly go at this point. And at this point, I just feel bad for Brian Cage. Team Taz was sort of built around him, and as Starks and Hobbs continued to develop, Cage just faded in importance and became the fourth or fifth most important person in Team Taz. He gets cut. I don't think he ever got cut per se, but he leaves. He comes back as part of Tully Blanchard Enterprises, and without him even being in attendance, he now becomes significantly less important now because the ROH World Champion is defected.
Yeah.
So where does Brian Cage now sit? Now are we going to turn Cage face, and we're going to have babyface Brian Cage against Jonathan Gresham?
They could try it, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would work. We could speculate. I don't know where Brian Cage is or what he's doing, but going back to Team Taz, he was when it was just him and Taz, it was great, but he was quickly outclassed by Ricky Starks. I'll say Ricky Starks is such a special and unique talent. It's hard to shine when you're next to him, unless you're someone like Hobbs, who's just stoic and is so good at being stoic that Ricky can do his thing and he doesn't lose anything. So Brian Cage sort of fading out of AEW, and then they said that they picked up the 1-year option on his contract, and then he shows up in Ring of Honor. So I'm expecting him to be a big piece in Ring of Honor, but we haven't seen him do anything with Ring of Honor since. He hasn't done much of anything. And when you have guys like Khan, who are quickly rising stars, he's doing great stuff on the indies, and now here he is. He's paired with the world champion. He has his tag partner, and he has Tully Blanchard. Where does Brian Cage fit now? Is he going to get, outclassed by a young guy again? So I don't know. Brian Cage doesn't fit here anymore. This faction has taken a different direction, and I don't think Brian Cage fits. But I also think he doesn't fit as a babyface. So I don't know what they're doing with this.
I mean, Cage definitely has history as a face and some success as a face. He did relatively well in Impact Wrestling that way.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely history for it. And he was doing all right as a face with Starks in that run before he left AEW, as trying to get revenge for Team Taz turning on him and so on and so forth. But it feels like very odd. I almost wonder if there's an audible here, or if something's going to come out and Cage isn't going to be available, or this feels like a course correction, but we can't really see the road right now. Yeah,
it would be very difficult, in my opinion, for him to get that babyface sympathy. Have people hate Tully Blanchard and hate Gresham and hate, this whole faction, when Gresham is very popular. As much as AW fans might not know him, he is still very popular with the Ring of Honor fan base. It's going to take a lot for them to get Brian Cage to be a bigger babyface than Gresham. I guess we'll see.
And this is also dashing my hopes to get the Foundation together in Ring of Honor again.
I guess it's not going to happen unless the Foundation comes back and they're like, Gresham, we need you.
And that's just it. I don't know. I mean, we've seen Josh Woods. He's been hanging around and has been doing his thing. We've seen him on Dark a few times. He's picking up some wins there. So clearly he's somebody that the company sees something in. I'd be shocked if he doesn't show up in the new Ring of Honor. We've only seen Rhett Titus, I believe, once on a Dark or an Elevation since he lost the TV title at Supercard of Honor. I've not seen hide nor hair of Hot Sauce Tracy Williams in a while. I mean, he's on the indies and fun and doing his thing, but there's a lot of guys who are very talented guys and would be great role players in this new Ring of Honor, and we're not seeing them at all. So, and I still want the Foundation versus the Blackpool Combat Club. I want to make this happen.
I think it would be a missed opportunity if they didn't, because if you put Yuta in Ring of Honor and you give him someone with him, Claudio, it could be Danielson, just someone with him. He has to have someone with him. He can't do this alone. But if you have him work his way up in Ring of Honor and Blackpool Combat Club is like running Ring of Honor, then it would be fun to bring back an ROH faction like the Foundation, or I mean, it would work with other factions, but we'll stick with the Foundation, who comes and they want to dethrone Yuta. I think that would be really interesting. The question is Tony Khan that dedicated to Ring of Honor to give, big talent to Ring of Honor to use for TV? I don't know. And also, if that's happening in Ring of Honor, how would it play out on AEW TV? I don't know.
Yeah.
So everything is all up in the air, and we're recording this July 10th. We have 13 days until our next pay-per-view. And, the Yuta match has build. Samoa Joe has horrendous build, but the build is there. Our women's division is non-existent. The big match is obviously the FTR Briscoes match. But yes. I don't know. There's just still so many questions.
There are. And objectively, I feel like we're still getting more build than we got for Supercard of Honor, which admittedly is a pretty low bar to clear. But that said, Supercard also turned into an absolutely fantastic show, even with all the last-minute announcements. And here we've at least got 3 or 4 matches ahead of time that we know are going to happen. We've confirmed Briscoes and FTR. We've confirmed Joe and Lethal. And we've confirmed Yuta and Garcia. With the events of this past week on Rampage, and if you're good, we can transition to this as well.
Yeah.
It certainly appears as though Mercedes Martinez has her challenger ready to roll for the ROH Women's World Title. You want to go into some of the setup there?
Yeah, I thought you were going to go into it, but
by all means, I will continue.
Okay.
I don't want to take up with all my long-winded nonsense. No, we had a tag match on Rampage with Mercedes Martinez and Serena Deeb, who've been playing the game of one-upsmanship for a few weeks now on Dark and Elevation against Kayla Sparks. And I feel bad. I remember Kayla, but I do not remember her partner, who was in the ring basically the entire time. I cannot remember for the life of me now.
Producer, look it up and put it down there.
No, I'll find it pretty quick here because it was on the same episode. It was it's Christina Marie and Kayla Sparks in about 2.5 minutes. They just rolled over them like they have everybody on Dark and Elevation. But the whole thing has been Serena and Mercedes each trying to one-up each other and be able to inflict more damage on their opponents and lock in their submission and do their thing. And at the end, afterwards, Deeb finally turned on Martinez and attacked her, and we had the beat down. We had her lock in the Serenity Lock with Mercedes tapping right away, and it certainly appears to be that's our challenger. We just haven't made it officially official yet, and I mean, it should be fantastic. As I've said, James has put it up on the screen there. I've said it on Twitter as well. Deeb is 2-1 lifetime against Martinez. I believe in title matches, Martinez is actually 1-0 against her. I believe they wrestled for the, I forget which promotion it was. They did have, I believe, one title match between the two of them, and Martinez did pick up the one. It was WSU. Okay. So it looks like that's where we're going. The match is going to be tremendous. I'm intrigued to see where the build goes because these are two battle-tested veterans who have been around the horn for a while now, who know each other inside and out, who have a past with each other. And I think it's going to be a blast. You have Mercedes Martinez coming in as the champ who's finally got some vindication after fighting and clawing and scratching her entire career. She's now finally got that recognition and that vindication on national TV. and obviously doesn't want to let that go. And then you've got Serena Deeb, who cut a tremendous promo in the build of her match with Thunder Rosa about a lot of the same stuff, that all the things that she's had to overcome in her career, and the perception of women's wrestling as a thing, and all of those hurdles that she had to get through. And it only seems kind of fitting that they're gonna be on that collision course.
Yeah, I think it's a very good matchup for our first big women's title program. I think these are two very talented veterans who are going to put on an incredible match. I have my own gripes with the Ring of Honor women's division so far, and the fact that there's no talent in it. I hope that Mercedes Martinez retains here, because I would like to keep her as the face of the women's division moving forward, just because I think she fits better here than she does in AEW. I think the AEW women's division is a little different, and she doesn't quite fit in there. She certainly could, but I think she fits better in Ring of Honor. And I think it's really interesting that Deeb is always in these who's better than me sort of feuds. She did it with Shida. She's doing it with Martinez. And I don't know. I think the Deeb Shida matches were very good, but that whole feud was, drawn out, and it ended kind of poorly, in my opinion. And I don't want to see that here. I want them to have this match, and then I want them to, diverge. And I want Deeb to go back to AEW. I want Mercedes Martinez to stay here. And I would like to revisit it in the future and have this history and this story. Because I think this is where Deeb really, really shines as a wrestler, where she's so smart. And she just remembers her opponents. And she can, in a match, she knows what they're going to do. And she can counter it very easily. I think that's where she really, really shines. And, Mercedes Martinez is a very different wrestler. She's a lot tougher and a lot grittier. And I don't know, their styles clash. No pun intended there. But I don't know. I think this feud is good for like a long-term Ring of Honor story to build this division off of. I would like to see them at the end of this match. Maybe we can have a debut, add someone else to this mix, this Ring of Honor women's division. Fingers crossed. I know it would be so nice. And I was going to say this earlier, and maybe I'll go back to it just for a second. When we were talking about Gresham and Moriarty having their match on Rampage, Tony Khan does love surprises, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get Gresham versus a mystery opponent at Death Before Dishonor in 13 days, because it's a long time to build a title program. And Tony Khan loves his mystery opponents. He needs something besides FTR and the Briscoes to really get people to buy this show. I mean, Yuta Garcia is pretty good, but I think teasing a mystery opponent or teasing a big debut, I think it would get people to buy it. And, Gresham's just kind of floating. He hasn't been anywhere. But back to the women's division, I think we need something. Like, Mercedes Martinez has been carrying this division on Dark and Elevation.
Yep.
We've gotten close to 0 AEW time. Ring of Honor Rampage was great. And we got our turn, and we got our story going. But Tony Khan needs something to make this division worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, you could take someone from AEW and throw them in there, of course. Maybe like, Penelope Ford, the Bunny, one of these women who's not doing a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But a big free agent debut would be great.
Absolutely. And far be it for me to sound like I'm carrying water for this or anything like that. But the complaint about the women's division being essentially empty, that could also be applied to the tag team division. Yeah. I know you and Haley talked about that on Tag Talk a little bit this week. I was able to watch that before we got started today. Everybody should. You'll hit it again during your plugs, but it's excellent stuff as always. And a lot of the roster is just not, as out in the weeds. We don't know. We don't know where it's going to be or what's going to happen. And so that's okay. I mean, but there's, heaven knows, there's plenty of great free agent talent out there. There's plenty of people out there who are doing great work. There's plenty of people with a history in Ring of Honor. They're doing great work. a couple of months ago, we did our women's roster drafts. There's a lot of great names out there. You can go back in our archives and back in the YouTube playlist and find it. We rep a bunch of them, and any of them would be great additions. So yeah, would not be shocked at all if we get a debut. Whether it's Penelope Ford, I don't know what her injury status is. Whether it's a new free agent like a Nixon Newell or somebody like that, that all those are on the table.
Yeah, I don't expect Tony Khan to throw a bunch of people in here and be like, give us a bunch of graphics and be like, here's your division. I fully, I trust him and I expect each signing to make story sense. I think Mercedes Martinez, we could do a whole lot here. We could do open challenges. We could do surprise debuts. Regardless of how you fantasy book it, the simple, answer is we need a division. Same thing with the tag division. We have FTR. We have Tully Blanchard Enterprises. They could do tag team stuff. And that's it. We don't even have an official confirmation if the Briscoes are going to be, standard parts of Ring of Honor moving forward. If we're going to see them again after this match. If they win the titles, of course we will. But it really does feel like the majority of what Tony Khan is focused on is Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal. And that, to me, says that he wants these guys for AEW. So he's building them on AEW as opposed to, like, Mercedes Martinez, who's been on Dark and Dark Elevation, which is AEW, but it's not the same as being on TV.
No.
And then, you got Yuta and Garcia. That build just makes sense. The story's there, everything. I think Yuta and Garcia are favorites of Tony Khan. So, of course, they're getting a lot of build for their match because they're going to be AEW staples moving forward. Gresham, he's a world champion. We haven't seen much of him at all. And he sort of mentioned that in a promo when it's becoming part of the story. But he's the world champion of your brand new promotion. We haven't seen much of him. And FTR, we see them with the Ring of Honor belt. But they have a bunch of other belts. So it's kind of like the tag division's fading in importance too. And I hate to be so negative because I feel like we're always so negative in these. But I just don't understand how you announce a pay-per-view and two of your big divisions are empty. I don't get that at all.
Yeah, and follow us on Twitter. We're very positive people.
We are. It might not seem like it, but we give a lot of love to all of these people up here, a bunch of wrestlers. Trust me.
But and yeah, it's not like we should expect an AEW ROH draft special episode or anything. Like we're not expecting anything quite so formal, but and maybe we're just not looking at it the right way, and maybe we're just not seeing what a good solution might be. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating to not really have a clue what the plans are. And I don't know if this is a case of Tony just thinking he was going to have TV set by now and that this wouldn't be an issue, and it's taking longer than he's anticipating. And so it's kind of throwing the entire timetable off. Like there's, who knows? And, we're remaining hopeful as well that we're going to have some kind of a television announcement at Death Before Dishonor, whether it's going to be on such and such streaming service, or we're revamping Honor Club and it's going to live there, or if there's a deal with HBO Max and the AEW archives and Ring of Honor will then broadcast live on HBO Max, with the Warner connection. No clue. Could be any number of things.
Yeah.
But I would love for it to be one of them, because I feel like once you have a dedicated spot for them, then you can start. I almost understand where we're at, that you don't have a dedicated spot for it to live. So fleshing out that roster serves, I'm not sure that it serves a valid purpose yet. So in a sense, I kind of see where we're at, but
yeah,
if that's the case, then tell us we're working on this, and maybe he's limited in what he can discuss. I'm spitballing. I have no idea, but I would love to know what where things stand. And at this point, I guess you can take advantage of that. You can bring in anybody you want. You know, when he brought in Ninja Mac for Super Card of Honor, like, I don't know that Ninja Mac is going to become a long-term member of the roster, but it was phenomenal. You know, you brought in Minoru Suzuki. He's obviously not going to be a long-term member of the roster, but hey, you know what? He's here. Why not? Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, to heck with it. Run Bryan Danielson against Gresham. Put over your ROH World Champion in a big way and have him beat Bryan Danielson clean in the center of the ring on pay-per-view. You know,
there's a lot that you could do. And, you know, I don't know how much crossover there is between AEW's fan base and Ring of Honor's fan base, but I imagine it's a lot. And I think AEW fans are conditioned when, you know, approaching a pay-per-view that there's going to be sort of wacky matchups that, you know, put on, you know, 5-star classics, that there's going to be surprises. There's going to be things they don't expect, you know, fun things. They're expecting a variety of styles, a variety of matches, stories, all these things, because AEW pay-per-views are typically so great. And I think Forbidden Door proved that AEW's fan base is a lot smarter than they get credit for. And they are very, very much aware of everything going on in wrestling, even if it's in Japan. And so Tony Khan has to be looking at Ring of Honor and saying, you know, this doesn't have to be just AEW, because I have this fan base who is very smart and they're, you know, they're in touch with wrestling, not just AEW. So that sort of broadens what he can do with Ring of Honor and the people he can bring in. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm just hoping, you know, fingers crossed. One, I want to keep this group of champions because I think this is an all-star lineup.
Yes.
But I'm just hoping that he approaches this pay-per-view with that mindset, and we do see some new roster additions, or maybe some, you know, changes, or, you know, just something. We need a little bit more substance to this. And he has said in a couple interviews recently that they are still working on TV, that, you know, streaming, YouTube, whatever it's going to be, they are still dedicated to doing Ring of Honor weekly. So what a better way to, you know, kick off your weekly TV show than having an AEW caliber pay-per-view with everything AEW fans expect to get them hooked to continue watching. But with that being said, should we go into FTR versus the Briscoes?
Yeah, we can discuss that. That will be fine. And I believe he said at one point that the way he made it sound in the most recent interview that I've heard was that it sounds like streaming is now probably the most likely destination. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to turn out to be the case or not. But hey, you know, just get us on weekly TV. We're ready.
Yeah. And I think if you put Ring of Honor in probably the Ring of Honor library, because that's a very valuable commodity, if you put that on HBO Max, just throwing it out there, then, you know, you open the door that you could do AEW on HBO Max, and you could do it well. And so Absolutely. you could really take advantage of this major partnership they have. And, you know, TV rights deals for AEW, they still have, it's a little way off before they start, you know, negotiating. But you have to believe that having, you know, a second promotion with probably one of the most valuable tape libraries in wrestling is definitely a bonus for them. Plus, you know, AEW's grown and it's doing incredible. Mm-hmm. But he has to utilize Ring of Honor. Like, you can't just let Ring of Honor sit here like this, where it's Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal cutting the same promo every week to build a match that is happening like 2 months later. We got to put a little bit more effort in here. And I think FTR versus the Briscoes, that there's a lot of effort there, but it's all the talent.
Yes. And make no mistake, Joe and Lethal will be very good. It will 100% deliver. But yes, the build has been admittedly lackluster. And yes, and FTR and the Briscoes is entirely on FTR and the Briscoes just being magnetic personalities and just being acts that people want to see. And ever since the first one wrapped, we've been talking about it and wondering when or if we're going to do it again, and when or if we're going to run it back, because it's atop a lot of people's match of the year lists. I think it's probably still atop mine, and I know it's probably atop, if not close to the top of yours.
Very top. Such a good match. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Like, FTR versus the Briscoes is a classic.
Absolutely. And it lived up to the build. This has been one where they chirped at each other for months and months and months. FTR shocked the world at Final Battle, showing up in Baltimore and actually showing up and attacking the Briscoes. And the pull-apart brawl was just... The crowd was absolutely electric. And everyone... could the match deliver? Like, we knew both of these teams were capable of it. Both of them had amazing matchups. The Briscoes have had amazing tag matches with everybody under the sun. We could do a deep dive. We could do a deep dive crossover episode with Tag Talk with all of the amazing tag matches the Briscoes have had over the years. With the Motor City Machine Guns, the Kings of Wrestling, the American Wolves, Steen and Generico, Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black. That's 5 off the top of my head alone, and there's plenty more. The Young Bucks. And they absolutely went out and delivered. James put on the bottom of the screen there. They got 5 stars from The Observer. It's been praised by everyone under the sun. If you haven't seen it yet, go find a way to see it.
Yeah, and I said this on Tag Talk about FTR and the Briscoes. There's something so intense about these tag teams. In the way that they present themselves to the crowd, but also the way they relate to one another, as in their own tag partner. The Briscoes, of course, are brothers, and they have that brotherly bond. But there's something so unique about FTR, where they're not brothers, but they're as close as brothers because they've, fought together and been through all this together. And you really see that dynamic come out in these matches. They've only had, the one match with the Briscoes. But these matches are very intense. And I think we see that in a lot of the promo videos they've done on Twitter, which has been most of the build for this feud. These promo videos where it's very easy to buy into it, and that they're, believing what they're saying, because in all likelihood they probably do believe what they say about one another and about themselves. And they're just generational talents. And admittedly, you probably don't need that much build for FTR versus the Briscoes. I think fans are clamoring for the second match. You could argue the Briscoes should win, FTR should win, whatever. But regardless, this match is going to be great. And they could have started building it a day before the pay-per-view, and the build would have been just as good, because these talent are so committed to making it happen. Mm-hmm. And you can't say that about any of the other matches that are going to be on this card. The talent have really taken this feud and sort of carried it, even when AWTV doesn't mention Ring of Honor all that much, despite the fact that FTR is carrying the belts. And either one of them would be great leaders of a tag division. If we build a tag division, I don't know what's happening. But this match is going to be the match of Death Before Dishonor. And I don't know how that fares for our world champion. First of all, I don't know that's ultimately the point of this episode, isn't it? What is going on with Jonathan Gresham? Yeah,
there's definitely that's kind of the question that hangs over everything. Where is this going to go? Who are we going to see? We talked about the possibility of a babyface Brian Cage, and both of us are, he can, but that doesn't get. And don't get me wrong, I think Brian Cage is a heck of a talent in the ring, but that doesn't get me excited either necessarily. I wonder if this is not one of those situations where, to borrow something from WWE, there was a point where, now follow where I'm going here. I saw the eyebrows. Where I'm going.
I'm listening.
There was a point where the Royal Rumble was and continues to be such a draw that who was fighting for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble event wasn't as important. Not that the title itself was not important, but the draw was the Rumble. That's why you bought that show. That's why you saw guys like Hardcore Holly get a world title match at that. There you go. See? That's what I'm talking about. That's why you saw guys like Jeff Hardy get a shot at Randy Orton before Jeff really, truly broke out as a singles guy. You saw those types of situations happen. You saw Rey Mysterio and The Undertaker happen or Rey Mysterio and Edge, I think, happened for a world title at a Royal Rumble because the world title was almost second fiddle. And I think you see FTR and Briscoes go on last. And I think whomever Gresham faces is not going to, I don't want to say it's not going to be as important because it's still the ROH world title and that title has prestige and has importance. But people are tuning in for FTR Briscoes, like you said. The second that match was announced, a whole lot of people made the decision, I'm going to buy that show no matter what else is on that card.
Yeah.
So that means you can play with a mystery opponent. You can play with a special guest from AEW. You can play with a free agent. You can play with anything you want almost in that spot because people are tuning in for FTR and Briscoes too. And if Gresham can deliver a good match, which he's Jonathan Gresham, he will absolutely deliver a good match. You know, more's the better.
Yeah, and it really makes me question Jonathan Gresham's future in Ring of Honor. Not that he's going to be fired or anything. I should probably clarify. I do think Tony Khan likes him as a wrestler. And I think when Tony Khan likes people as wrestlers, I think he wants them on Dynamite. Not saying he doesn't like Ring of Honor or whatever, but I think he definitely sees Dynamite main events as like the absolute peak of the mountain for AEW. And Jonathan Gresham, he hasn't done a whole lot for Ring of Honor, even though he's world champion. Of course, he's been doing stuff outside of Ring of Honor and AEW. You know, he has Terminus, he has all these things. I don't know. And maybe this is a bold prediction. This is my bold prediction for Death Before Dishonor. It almost makes me think that Gresham might drop the title here and that we move him on. And he goes and he does something else. The Tully Blanchard Enterprises thing doesn't fit for me. And that makes me think something is going to go awry here for Jonathan Gresham with Tully Blanchard. I think the group does lack star power. But I don't know. So this whole turn isn't working. So even if the intent was for him to stay in the group and be world champion in the group, I think we have to do something to fix this. And I think to fix it, we get Brian Cage to kick Gresham out of Tully Blanchard Enterprises and we move Gresham somewhere else. Because I don't think there's many people who like this angle, and I think that's bad for Gresham and it's bad for the world title. So we got to fix it. And I think fixing it is giving him the boot out of Ring of Honor and putting him in AEW.
Yeah, I can see a lot of that. And since Rampage, I have been fantasy booking ways in my head that can get Gresham out of Tully Blanchard Enterprises, and that the master plan all along was to bring back the Foundation. And I feel like I'm a pretty bright guy, and I feel like I see a lot of this stuff, not to sound too full of myself, but I feel like I see a lot of this stuff. I don't see how you get from A to B, though. I don't see how you get from A to B with getting him, it was my plan all along to get the Foundation in. And this, because I don't see, because what's the logic there? Like, were you trying to do this to handpick your opponent? If so, why are you handpicking potentially Brian Cage over Lee Moriarty, who you're 2-0 lifetime against Moriarty?
Yeah.
So the pieces just don't fit. And it's bothering me because I am a stated and avowed fan of the Foundation as a concept. And, I'm willing to go along with it because creative has sort of earned that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But I don't see the road right now. I don't see the trail. I don't see anything.
And I think part of the issue is we did this big major turn, which is, game changing for the promotion a couple weeks before our first big pay-per-view in months. And that's worrying. That makes me think it was, a last minute decision because something happened or, someone became available or something. But you don't, it's your world champion. And he does this big heel turn and joins a group that, Ring of Honor hasn't had TV, but at Supercard of Honor, this group was a big deal. they were presented as monsters who were going to destroy everyone. And now they have the world champion on their side. So
who is a tremendous professional wrestler and a great talent and a great character, but is the absolute antithesis of a monster.
Yeah. He's very much like a smart guy who will outthink you as much as he'll out wrestle you. And he's a very technical wrestler. And that doesn't mean that everyone else in this group is a bad technical wrestler, that all they can do is, German suplexes. But when we look at the reality of it, Gresham does not fit in this group. And he's the world champion. So there has to be some purpose to this turn. And to me, maybe it's like wishful thinking and I'm like trying to rationalize this in my brain. But if he's going to have purpose in this group, to me, I think the best way to take it is for his purpose to be sort of used. And then, something happens. He loses the title. Maybe not at this pay-per-view, maybe in the future. And he gets screwed over by the group. And you could bring in the foundation there too. Like, they could be like Gresham's friends, like consoling him. And then we could do Tully Blanchard Enterprises versus the foundation. That would be good. Or maybe they're the ones who screw Gresham over and they join Tully Blanchard Enterprises. There's lots of ways we can go. But I think, what we're both saying is that this makes no sense, and it needs to make sense because we have 13 days to make it make sense. And I hope this week we see something on Rampage that will make it. There has to be an explanation because this is your world champion, and this makes no sense for the future of the promotion. If you look at every other feud, Joe and Lethal, that makes sense. There's history there. Yuta Garcia, that's a blood feud. We've been building that for months. Mercedes and Deeb, that's a story. We've been building that. FTR and the Briscoes, that's a generational feud that'll keep going and going and going until they retire. Gresham's the oddball here, and he's the world champion.
Yeah, it's and like I said, I have faith, and they've earned the benefit of the doubt in a lot of these ways. I'll go back to the whole battle royal concept to determine the first challenger for Jon Moxley that AEW did, and there was a part of me that was like, battle royal, really? We're gonna, okay, whatever. And I think if you go back and check my Twitter feed over the course of those live tweets, I do some live tweeting of Rampage and Dynamite, things like that. Once I sort of put it through my head of, oh, we're getting Jon Moxley and Brody King in a first time ever match, and that's gonna be amazing. And like, we could pull something like that out of the hat, where on some other show, whether it's Rampage this week or Dynamite this week or what have you, of, hey, we're going to figure out the challenger at Death Before Dishonor, and it's going to be this, and this. And they have an absolutely absurd collection of fantastic professional wrestlers at their disposal. And you have, as I said, the benefit of a show where the world title is not going to be the most focused upon match. And you can do anything with that, and
you can have fun with it.
That's exciting to me. You could have Bryan Danielson show up, and just because Gresham's been chirping at Danielson for a while now, he's wanted Danielson and he's wanted Punk, I believe, is the two he's been calling out. And Danielson is, if he's not healthy, he's on the verge of healthy, and holy cow, Jonathan Gresham versus Bryan Danielson. I'm gonna convince myself that that's what's actually happening, and then I'm gonna be sad when it doesn't happen.
Well, it's really interesting because when Claudio debuted at Forbidden Door at the press conference after, Tony had said that maybe Claudio was going to debut here at this show, and he was going to be with Ring of Honor. Where was his debut going to be? Was he going to debut against Gresham, and we had to scrap that because we needed him for Blood and Guts and all this stuff? Was he just going to show up for Yuta's match and join Blackpool Combat Club? Like, where was he going to fit? Mm-hmm. So now we have that hole that we have to fill. And you could just put him in the show anyway. You could just stick him in with Gresham and it would be fine.
Of course.
Or you could do Danielson. You have me hoping for Danielson now. But either way, if the angle was Blackpool Combat Club to be major in Ring of Honor, I think you got to start with taking down Gresham.
I mean, the idea of setting up a satellite Blackpool Combat Club franchise, I guess, sort of.
A little chapter.
Yeah, a little side chapter in Ring of Honor, and do Wheeler and Claudio, and find a third, whether that's Moriarty or
Garcia. I just want Garcia there so bad. He fits so well in that group. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. But I'm kind of loving him being just a glorious jerk with Jericho's crew. I have some reservations about that angle in general, but Daniel Garcia and 2.0 are not among them. Yeah. But that being said, oh my gosh, 2.0 in new Ring of Honor.
I didn't even think about that.
How fantastic would that be if I'm seeing AEW groups now setting up chapters in Ring of Honor because of the shared universe between the two. And how about 2.0 versus FTR? That'd
be so good.
Like, again, Tony, we've talked about this.
We got this. You could take Butcher, the Blade, and the Bunny, all three of them in Ring of Honor, and
right in.
The stock of the whole promotion rises.
Well, that was not that different from what Brent Albright's original concept was in Ring of Honor. He was absolutely a mercenary. He was. They literally called him the hired gun, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Where it was, I'm going to take out whoever pays me the most money tells me to take out. Butcher and Blade fit that dynamic tremendously. But point is, like, there's a lot that we can do here. I do have faith that we're going to get some answers. I'm glad that we're seeing more Ring of Honor content on Rampage and on AEW television. I continue to remain hopeful that we're going to see something soon about TV, whether it's streaming or otherwise, because I do think that's the impediment at this point to Tony fleshing out the roster. And I think once you see that, the ball's going to start rolling really fast.
Yeah. And knowing Tony Khan, he probably already has rosters planned, and he's probably in talks with people, and we're worrying about nothing. But I don't know. I'm super excited for this pay-per-view, and that's just probably my closing thought. I'm so excited for this show, primarily because this is an amazing group of champions to start with, and I think we're going to get some amazing matches. And I don't know. There's no match on this card so far that I'm totally against seeing. Joe Lethal's the only one that I'm kind of like iffy on, but it's going to be a great match, so I can ignore the story and I can ignore, all the weirdness. But I don't know. I think, our gripes aside, I think Ring of Honor is in a good place. It took a while to get there, but this Ring of Honor Rampage episode really fixed a lot of the issues that I had.
Yeah. And we had Bobby Cruz in handling ring announcing duties. I never want to miss a chance and I was glad to shout out having Bobby Cruz there to handle the ring announcing, and Caprice Coleman in at the commentary. We were just missing Ian. We were almost there. We were 2/3 of the way there. We just needed Ian.
Tony, if you're watching, we have check boxes for you.
There's a whole
just
list.
DM us. Just get in contact with us. We'll help you with this.
100%.
We know Ring of Honor. We'll help you out, but just DM us, get in touch. It's all good.
It's going to be great. The only final thought I can say is buy the show. You probably already made the decision when we heard FTR Briscoes 2, but Wheeler and Garcia, if you haven't seen their match at IWTV 100, it's spectacular. James mentioned on the bottom earlier on, the two went to a 60-minute time limit draw. Spoilers, but it's been months and months and months. It's fine. Joe and Lethal has gobs of history, so you can sink your teeth into that. Gresham is going to deliver a tremendous match, whoever he's in the ring with. I've been telling you for weeks to hop on and to get on the bandwagon with us, and there's still plenty of room. So let's do this.
I totally agree. Do you want to do your plugs so we can wrap this up? We're coming up on an hour, and I'm sure people are tired of listening to us talk.
Well, find me on Twitter at Kyle K. Sparks. And this is where I am live tweeting Rampage and Dynamite usually. Last week, I was able to I'm in a bit of a time delay because I don't get Access TV, but I also live tweeted through Impact. So I had some fun watching that. I'm trying to get back into Impact Wrestling because they're doing tremendous work right now.
Yeah.
I'm writing for Body Slam periodically. I just wrote a long piece earlier this month about the Claudio and Eddie Kingston feud that I was particularly proud of. I was glad to do that.
Very good.
And other than that, I'm here every Monday at 3:00 for the Code of Honor podcast with my fantastic co-host here. And anything else that I'm doing, I will be sharing there. So give me a follow, and follow Code of Honor Cast at Code of Honor Cast on Twitter to make sure you keep up with all the happenings on the show.
Yes, definitely check out Kyle's editorial. It's so well written. It's so informative. Even if you think you know the history of these two, I think you'll find out that you've forgotten something, missed a detail. Kyle's very, very good at that history stuff. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Fuller_Kiley. I do some live tweeting, not so much recently, but I'll get back into it. You can see me here every week with Kyle talking about Ring of Honor. It looks like we're going to be having a lot to talk about in the coming weeks, so you don't want to miss an episode. We'll probably do a predictions episode when we have the full card. So stay tuned for that. Follow us on Twitter for more about that. You can see me every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Fightful Overbook for Tag Talk. Like Kyle mentioned, we talked about FTR and the Briscoes this week and the build to that. We talked about, the development of the Ring of Honor tag division. And we talked about a lot of other tag team stuff. We did a long time talking about Hangman Page and the Young Bucks. So if you want to see us be so romantic about this and so dramatic, go check out Tag Talk. We got so into it, but it was great. And, the feedback we've received so far has been great. As for everything else I'm doing, just follow me on Twitter at Fuller_Kiley. Watch us every Monday at 3. Follow Body Slam on all the socials, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Facebook, all the things. Read editorials like Kyle's and our producer, Jamie. Read their editorials on bodyslam.net. Follow Corey, who made us this beautiful overlay with our wonderful champions up there. I love it. Follow him. Our producer knows his Twitter handle. I forgot it already. Follow him. He also does a lot of good stuff for Body Slam. And, Body Slam on Pro Wrestling Tees. Got to plug that. And, we'll see you guys next week.
Good.